You know that moment when someone walks toward you at a coffee shop smiling like they know you. Your body recognizes them before your brain can explain why. You know the face. You remember the meeting, the hallway, the party, the neighbor's dog, the way they laughed at something 3 weeks ago. And then the name disappears. Not slowly. It falls through a trapdoor. So now you are standing there smiling back, trying to sound warm and normal, while your mind runs a tiny emergency search. Sarah, Megan, Laura. Did we meet at work? Please say your own name somehow. And because forgetting a name feels personal, you may feel rude even when you are trying very hard to be respectful. But here's the reversal. For many people, forgetting names is not proof that they do not care. It is often a sign that faces context and social meaning were encoded more strongly than a random sound label. A face arrives with a whole weather system. Expression, voice, clothing, location, mood, the room you were in, the feeling you had around that person. A name is often just a sound dropped into the middle of that moment while your attention is busy doing 12 other social jobs. You are reading expression, tone, distance, timing, and whether this is a handshake moment or a small nod moment. Then the name gets offered once, usually in the first 3 seconds when your social brain is still booting up. No wonder it does not always stick. And yet people treat names like moral evidence. If you remember my name, you must care. If you forget my name, maybe I did not matter. That is why this tiny memory failure can carry so much shame. It is not just a blank in the brain. It feels like a social verdict. But memory is not a filing cabinet where every detail receives equal space. Memory is selective. It favors what feels useful, emotional, repeated, distinct, or connected to something you already know. Faces are rich. Name can be strangely thin. A face gives the brain patterns, eyes shape movement, familiarity, emotional signals, tiny differences that help you recognize a person in a crowd. A name, especially a first name you have heard once, may not have a built-in picture story or meaning. It can float away because nothing caught it. Research on names and faces is more nuanced than the simple idea that humans are always better with faces. A classic PubMed Index study by H.W. Faw warned that the test design matters. That matters because everyday life is not just asking, can I recognize this face? It is asking, can I connect this face to the exact verbal label at the exact moment someone expects me to say it? Those are different tasks. Recognizing someone is one kind of memory. Identifying them by name is another. You may know that someone belongs in your life without being able to retrieve the word attached to them. That is the strange middle zone, familiar but unnamed. It is why you can remember that a person told you about their back porch, their anxious rescue dog, and their terrible commute, but still have no access to the name that was said right before all of that. The story stuck. The label did not. This can feel especially familiar if you are sensitive to social tone. You may notice tension, volume, posture, who feels left out, and whether you are taking up too much space. So when someone says, I'm Jason, the name enters a crowded room. Your brain hears it, but it is also tracking the smile, the noise, the pressure to respond, and the social role. That does not mean you are broken. It may mean your attention was aimed at the human being more than the label. That sounds comforting, but it has a practical downside. People like hearing their names. Names are identity handles. They make a person feel seen, included, and personally addressed. So when your brain drops the name, you may start avoiding names completely. You say, hey, you. You say, good to see you. You wait for someone else to say it first. You become a social detective, scanning emails, badges, group chats, and seating charts for rescue. And the longer you avoid asking, the more awkward it becomes. A 10-second lapse can turn into a 6-month secret. This is where shame turns a normal memory lapse into a social strategy. The problem is no longer the forgotten name. The problem is the performance required to hide it. Names are harder when they stay arbitrary. If your coworker is named Mark, nothing about the sound Mark naturally connects to his face, his job, or the way he laughs. So the name needs a hook mark from the Tuesday meeting. Mark with a blue notebook. Mark who asked the good question about deadlines. The name needs a place to live. There is another layer too. Faces carry emotional information. A face tells you whether someone seems safe, amused, guarded, tired, open, or pretending to be fine. If reading moods mattered in your life, you may remember expressions because expressions felt useful. That does not mean every forgotten name has a dramatic backstory. It simply means attention has a history. Maybe you remember the face because the face carried the meaning. The name was only the label on the door. There is also a difference between remembering and retrieving. Sometimes the name is not gone, it is blocked. You can feel it nearby. It starts with an M maybe. 2 syllables. You can almost hear someone else saying it. Then 3 hours later, while brushing your teeth, it pops up perfectly. This is not because your brain wanted to embarrass you. Retrieval depends on cues. In the moment, pressure can narrow access. Later, when the pressure drops, the memory has room to surface. The name was not absent. It was unavailable under social spotlight. That distinction can be surprisingly kind, because many people who forget names are not careless. They are often the opposite. They care so much about not hurting someone that the pressure makes retrieval worse. The sentence, "I should know this," becomes a fog machine. The more urgently you search, the less available the answer feels. The shadow side is when shame starts shrinking your social life. You stop introducing people because you are afraid you will miss a name. You avoid networking events because the room feels like a test you did not study for. You pretend not to see someone in public because you recognize them but cannot place them, and the uncertainty feels too exposed. That is when a memory quirk becomes a cage. The goal is not to become a flawless name machine. The goal is to become honest enough that one forgotten name does not make you disappear. There is a graceful repair. You can say, "I remember our conversation, but I am blanking on your name. Can you remind me?" That sentence separates the person from the label. It says you mattered enough for me to remember the human moment. My brain just dropped the handle. Most decent people understand this because most decent people have been there. Still, it is worth building kinder systems. After meeting someone, write a tiny note if it helps. Nicole, pottery class, yellow raincoat, kind laugh. Use the person's name once naturally after hearing it, not as a sales trick, but as a memory anchor. Connect the name to context. Let your calendar, contacts, or notes support you without shame. A system is not cheating. A system is compassion with a practical spine. And if you are on the other side, if someone forgets your name but remembers your story, try to notice the difference. They may not have failed to value you. They may have stored you in a more human place than the name tag. A name matters, but it is not the whole person. Sometimes the face is remembered because the person was felt. Sometimes the name is forgotten because the label had no roots yet. So if you remember faces but forget names, maybe you are not socially careless. Maybe your brain is better at storing presents than labels. Maybe you notice the room before the roll call. That does not remove the awkwardness, but it can remove the shame. The next time a familiar face walks toward you and the name vanishes, take a breath. You are not defective. You are retrieving under pressure. You are trying to connect a living person to a small verbal tag. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stop performing perfect memory and say, honestly, remind me your name again. I remember you. My brain just lost the label. That is not failure. That is repair. And in real connection, repair matters more than performance. If this happens to you, what do you remember first? The face, the story, the vibe, or the name?